We were just discussing on number 6 how because there's one decimal place, this would be over 10. One decimal place, this would be over 10. One decimal place, this would be over 10. And this is a whole number, so it's over 1. So we found the common denominator to be 10. And as I was telling you at the end of the last video, multiplying by 10 just moves every number's decimal place over one place. So that 0.2x turns into 2x. 3, move the decimal over 1 turns into 30, minus 30. Bring down your equal, 1.3 turns into 13x. 1.4 turns into 14. So multiplying by 10 just moves all the decimal places one place to the right. And now we have a normal problem, no decimals, easy schmeezy, right? So now we need to move all of our x's to the left. So we do the opposite since we're crossing the equal sign. This is positive 13x, so we subtract 13x, and it cancels on that side, which is what we want. And so we get negative 11x minus 30 equals negative 14. And we need everything without an x over to the right, so add 30, add 30. So negative 11x equals 16. And the opposite of times negative 11 is divide by negative 11. So I can see my answer is negative 16 elevenths. And you do not want to change that into a decimal because that decimal goes on forever. So if a decimal goes on forever, don't change it. Negative 16 divided by 11. See that? That means it goes on forever. So we just leave it exactly like it is. And we could still do a quick check. So let's say on a test you don't have time to write down every little single step of the check. Well, just put your negative 16 elevenths here. Unless they ask you. If they ask you to write a check, you need to do a perfect formal check. But with something like this where I get a weird answer and I go, I'm not sure that's right, I would just take my calculator out. So tell myself where I need to plug things in and then just type it in real fast. So this would be 0.2 and then it would be times negative 16 fraction bar 11 and then subtract 3 and write down what you get there. Oh, it's what? Negative 3.2909. Looks like it keeps on going, doesn't it? 09909090. Yeah. So we can cut that off. Here we go. So now let's do the other side. 1.3 times negative 16 fraction bar 11 minus 1.4. And look at that. In 30 seconds, we just verified that that ugly answer is correct because we got negative 3.2, the 90 repeating again. So doesn't matter how ugly your problem is or how ugly your answer is, it's so fast and easy to check. So if you have extra time, go back and check on your test. Okay, so that's enough of the checking. I think I've shown you enough. Ones where I wrote by hand, ones where I did in my head, ones where I did on the calculator. So you just use whatever you need to so that you can get your test done. Okay, now we have another one that's going to make you think a little bit. So this one has 2 decimal places. That means its denominator's 100. This one is over 1. This one's over 10. So we have 10, 1, and 100. So does everybody agree the common denominator's 100? Can't pick 10 this time because this one has 100. So you always pick the highest one. So that means I need to, since there's only 3 terms, I'm going to go ahead and just put 100 beside each one. And guess how many students forget the A? They're like, oh, I didn't know we had to multiply it. You don't get a pick. Every single term gets multiplied by 100. So if multiplying by 10 moved the decimal one place to the right, guess what multiplying by 100 does? Moves it 2 places to the right. So that's going to turn into 4 parentheses a plus 6. And we don't go inside the parentheses because that 4 is going to get distributed and that will take care of multiplying by 100. So just whatever's outside, multiply by 100 and it turns to 4. 100 times a is going to be 100a. And then here, 1 makes it 5, 2 places makes it 50. So everybody comfortable with that? I just took every decimal place and moved it over 2. So 1, 2. So that turned into 4. Whatever's in parentheses stays the same. 100 times a is 100a. And don't skip things just because they're not decimals. We're not allowed. And 0.5 turned into 50 when we moved the decimal place 2 places to the right. So now we have to distribute. So we get 4a plus 24 plus 100a equals 50. We have some like terms over here. So that's going to be what, 104a plus 24 equals 50. So we got rid of our fractions, decimals, got rid of our parentheses, we combine like terms. So now it's time to get all your letters on one side. And you'll notice all my A's are already on the left. So now anything without an A goes to the right. So minus 24, minus 24. And we have to do the opposite because it's crossing the equal sign. So we get 104a equals 26. So the opposite of multiply by 104 is divide by 104. And I don't know how many of you know it, but your calculator simplifies fractions for you. So if you don't feel like simplifying that, just let the calculator do it. You use the fraction key. So you type in 26 fraction bar 104 and it changes it to a nice simplified fraction for you. So it's just 1/4. Cool, right? So you just have to make sure you type it in just like you see it. Numerator divided by denominator, and don't use the division key, use the fraction key, and then it turns it into a simplified fraction. Awesome. Okay, let's go ahead and turn to page 3. Couple more fraction decimal problems and then we're going to move on to the special case, and that will be it for 1.1. Okay, so this one makes us think a little bit. So now we have fractions and decimals. So most students, first instinct, change them all to decimals. Bad idea. And I wrote why here. 1/3 is 0.33333333333333. So how are you going to work an algebra equation with that in it? You can't. So if you have a fraction that can't be turned into a nice decimal, then that means you should turn them all into fractions. So this would be 5/10 x. So 5/10 x, and we'll simplify our fractions in just a minute. This has 2 decimals, so 1 decimal is 10, 2 decimals is 100, so this would be plus 25/100 equals 1/3 x plus 5/4. So now I have them all in the same unit. So now I can find the LCD more easily and so on. It's really hard to find an LCD when part of them are decimals and part of them are fractions. So you need them either all fractions or all decimals. But since that's not a nice decimal, that tells you to make them all fractions. But then I go, oh, look, these can be simplified. So let's simplify them. So remember, our calculator does it. 5 fraction bar 10, which we all know is 1/2. So this is going to turn into 1/2 x. So we don't have to work with such big numbers. And I think everybody knows that's 1/4, but I'll show you on the calculator anyway. 25 fraction bar 100 is 1/4. And the other two fractions are already simplified, so we're good. So now let's go about the business of finding the LCD. So we have smaller fractions. We don't have fractions and decimals missed. So our largest denominator is 4, so we're just going to start doing multiples. So does 4 work? Nope, 3 doesn't go into 4. 4 times 2 is 8. Nope, 3 doesn't go into 8. 4 times 3 is 12. Yep, 3 goes into 12, 4 goes into 12, 2 goes into 12. So ding, ding, ding. That would be our LCD, is 12. Because every denominator in the simplified fraction is divisible by 12. Or, no, I said that backwards. Every denominator in the simplified equation goes into 12 evenly. It's not divisible by 12. That was bad language. Okay, so let's put the 12 in the numerator of every single term and put a 12 there. And then I kind of like to extend so I can see that's part of the numerator now. So remember what we said on the front page. Multiply, then divide. 12 times 1 is 12. Divided by 2 is 6x. Or half of 12 is 6x. You can think of it that way too. 12 divided by 4 is plus 3. What I see students do a lot on the test is they multiply the numerators and then they forget about this, so they just write 12. But this is a multiplication and a division problem. So 12 divided by 4 is 3. Equals 12 divided by 3 is 4x. Plus 60 divided by 4 is 15. And if you ever need to use your calculator to simplify, that's fine. But what I do in my head is I go 4 goes into 12 3 times. So that's really 5 times 3, 15. So I check it both ways to make sure I got it right. Or I do 60 divided by 4 on the calculator and I get 15. So look at, now I just have a nice, pretty, easy problem. So I need all my x's to the left. So subtract 4x, subtract 4x. And that leaves me with 2x plus 3 equals, so those are going to be gone, and 15. So anything without an x now needs to move to the right. So we do the opposite since we're crossing the equal sign and we subtract 3. So we get 2x equals 12. The opposite of multiply by 2 is divide by 2. So we just get the beautiful number 6. So look at that nice answer compared to how ugly that original problem was. They just get easier and easier. That's why doing your homework makes a big difference, because you can see even as we move through the notes, the more we do, the easier they get. Okay, we'll start 9, but we don't have enough time to finish it, but we might as well get a start on it until the video stops. Unfortunately, this video only gives me 15 minutes, so I wish it was longer sometimes, but you guys probably like having little breaks afterwards, so. Okay, for a student's first semester at college, the college charges $105 per credit hour. So $105 times how many hours you're taking. plus a one-time $50 admission fee. So they've written the equation here. C equals $105 times how many credit hours plus